always been on a team that he thought could win the Super Bowl. That's something else. Patrick Mahomes and company starting their quest for a three-peat on Saturday night right here on ESPN. Catch all the action. C.J. Stroud, the Texans, headed to KC for a matchup with the defending champs. 4:30 Eastern on ABC, ESPN, ESPN Deportes, and ESPN+. All right, let's see what's on trend for these playoff games. You know how this works. I give a stat. You tell me if the trend continues. So Mahomes and Travis Kelce have combined on 17 touchdowns in the playoffs. Already have the most passing touchdowns of any duo ever. 2 more than Tom Brady to Rob Gronkowski. So, Swagoo, should we expect to see these two revert to their playoff form this week?
As long as the Lord continues to provide breath to their body. Yes, you do. Yes, you will. We talked all season last year about Travis Kelce not going off, not having the type of season. Get to the playoffs. We all excited about the matchup with him and Kyle Hamilton, and they continue to dismantle Kyle Hamilton in the AFC Championship. I do expect this rapport and this longevity to show its face in the playoffs once again between Travis and Pat.
All right, back in week 4, Derrick Henry ran for 199 yards against Buffalo, the most any player had against the Bills since Sean McDermott became the head coach in 2017. Now, of course, it's the playoffs. King Henry stepped up his game even more. Only Terrell Davis has averaged more yards per game in the postseason. RC, do we see a repeat of the King's dominance against the Bills?
You know what? I don't necessarily know if he rushes for almost 200, but I expect him to be dominant in this game and also prominent. I know Todd Monken understands when he looks back at games they've lost this season or last year's AFC Championship, he abandoned the run way too early. The reason you go out and get Derrick Henry is for moments like this. He'll look back at that early film from this year, back at some of the film from some of the losses, and he'll realize that Derrick Henry has to be important, and I expect him to shine once again under the brightest lights.
Yeah, we've been beating that drum since last year's playoffs, running the ball. All right, Cooper Kupp had a season-low 1 target in the wild card game against the Vikings, averaging just 2.5 targets in his last 4 games to go along with just 1 reception. He's gotten just 7% of the Rams' targets after getting over 20% in his first 9 games of the season. Dan, is this a blip or a trend that the Rams should be worried about?
I think it's a trend. I don't know if you have to be worried about it. Number one, Puka Nacua is the guy that they run their pass game through. He's the guy that they constantly want to try to move around. 2, Kyren Williams, their back, needs to touch the football. He's a walking touchdown, essentially, when he plays in football games. I do think that Cooper is still capable of having those clutch catches in third down moments or down in the red zone. So it's not an alarm that he's not the most integral part of their pass game. But I do know this. There's going to come a moment on Sunday where they are going to need a big play in the pass game. And I would guarantee Matthew Stafford is going to have him in his vision.
Absolutely. All right, on to the Lions. They ran 12 personnel at the 3rd highest rate in the league this season. It was particularly dynamic with tight end Sam Laporta. Jared Goff threw 6 touchdowns to Laporta out of 12 personnel. That's tied with Mark Andrews and Jamar Chase for the most in the NFL. So, Mina, should they lean into it again?
100%. The Washington Commanders defense is weak against tight ends, 26th in DVOA. As you mentioned, Porter really came on the second half of the season. But I also think you want to live in 12 personnel and keep him on the field in the run game. The Commanders are very thin at linebacker, even with Wagner being injured. Wagner is likely to play. And I suspect they will be vulnerable to the Lions running the football with those tight ends on the field. So I wouldn't be surprised if they lean heavily into that personnel.
Yeah, they had a big play against nickel 13% of the time. This season, 3rd highest in the NFL behind the Ravens and the Packers. As Adam Schefter is back with us, and Shefty told us that the Cowboys might take a hot minute to decide their next head coach, but apparently there's a little bit of news on that front. Shefty, what is it?
Well, the Cowboys requested and received permission to interview the Eagles offensive coordinator, Kellen Moore, who knows the Cowboys organization well, having served as an assistant coach there in Dallas under Jason Garrett. Kellen Moore is somebody who people view as a lead candidate for the Cowboys job. Clearly, he would have the types of traits that would appeal to Jerry Jones. Gets along well with Dak Prescott, which would be a prerequisite for this job, and he will interview. Todd Monken, meanwhile, interviewing today for the Jaguars job, the Bears job on Friday as the Ravens get ready for Sunday night's game against the Buffalo Bills. Huge matchup, but also a huge time for Todd Monken, who's done a great job with the Ravens offense, and we'll see whether he can find a way to get in on one of these head coaching jobs in Jacksonville today or Chicago tomorrow. And the Vikings defensive coordinator, Brian Flores, has 3 head coaching interviews set up this week. The Jets and Jaguars on Friday, the Bears on Saturday. Flores getting a long look, did a tremendous job with the Vikings defense this season. Feels like he's learned a lot from his previous stint in Miami there, and now these teams get a chance to sit down to talk to him about what he believes he's learned as he moves forward forward and tries to get one of these head coaching jobs.
Yes, slow first year there in Miami. We know what happened with Tua, but he did go 19-14 his last 2 seasons. It'll be very interesting to see where he ends up, if elsewhere. Adam, thank you. We'll be back with you in just a bit. But as these playoff games continue, we turn our attention to the trenches. I give you the game. You tell me a battle along the O-line and the D-line that could determine the winner. And Swagoo, this is right in your wheelhouse. So we're going to start with you. Kansas City, Texans coming to town. What you looking for?
We finally got off receivers and quarterbacks and got to the real part of the game. Will Anderson versus Jawan Taylor. Heavy hand man is going to be the nickname for Will Anderson. This is going to be interesting as far as trying to get Patrick Mahomes off of his spot. And Will Anderson had a phenomenal game against the Los Angeles Chargers, albeit some of those were miscommunication by that offensive line. This will be a matchup I'll have my eyes squarely set on.
Hey there! Big game coming up this Saturday. Texans versus Chiefs in the AFC divisional round. You know what that means, right? It's win or go home, and Arrowhead Stadium is ready to roar. But here's the twist. It's going to be freezing. And I'm not just talking about a little chill. We're talking 21 degrees at kickoff, and it might drop even lower by the end of the game. Imagine that! Now, think about this. The Texans aren't used to this kind of weather. Playing indoors or in warm climates is their comfort zone. But stepping into the cold, especially against a team like the Chiefs, is going to test them in every way possible, physically and mentally. So, what do you think? Does this freezing forecast give the Chiefs the upper hand? Or will the Texans find a way to push through? Let me know in the comments. Next up, let's dive into how the Texans have handled the cold in the past. Stay with me. Alright, so let's talk about the Texans and cold weather. You probably know they're not exactly famous for braving freezing temperatures. Playing indoors and in warm climates, like Jacksonville or Houston, is their comfort zone. But here's the surprising part. They've pulled off wins in the cold before. Back in December 2008, the Texans faced the Green Bay Packers in the freezing tundra of Lambeau Field, just 3 degrees at kickoff. Guess what? They walked away with a win. 4 years earlier, in Chicago, they played the Bears in a 12-degree game. Another win. Now, does that mean they've mastered cold weather? Not exactly. Those games were a long time ago, and this matchup is on a whole different level. With playoff intensity and a hostile Arrowhead crowd, the Texans are in for a serious challenge. So, here's a question for you. Do you think they can recreate that cold weather magic? Vote in the poll or drop your thoughts in the comments. Coming up, let's zoom in on CJ Stroud and how he's fared in the cold. Stick around. Let's talk about the Texans' leader, CJ Stroud. He's had some experience in cold weather from his Ohio State days, but the NFL is a whole different ballgame. And if we're being honest, his track record in freezing temps isn't great. So far, Stroud has played just 2 NFL games in temperatures below 30 degrees Fahrenheit, and both were tough losses. Remember last year's divisional round against the Ravens? They lost 34-10. Then, in Week 16 this season, he faced, you guessed it, the Chiefs, and they fell short again, 27-19. It's clear the cold hasn't been kind to him. Add the pressure of Arrowhead Stadium and the playoff stakes, and you've got a serious uphill battle. Meanwhile, Patrick Mahomes thrives in the cold. He's won 9 of his last 10 games under 30 degrees Fahrenheit. That's the kind of experience Stroud is up against. What do you think, though? Can Stroud break through and prove himself, or will the cold get the better of him again? Share your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear your take. Up next, we'll explore how the Chiefs dominate in freezing conditions. Don't go anywhere. Alright, now let's shift our focus to the Chiefs. If there's one team that knows how to handle the cold, it's Kansas City. Just look at their history. Remember last year's game against the Dolphins? It was one of the coldest in league history, hitting a bone-chilling -4 degrees Fahrenheit, and the Chiefs still pulled off a win. But it's not just about the team, it's about Patrick Mahomes. This guy is practically built for cold weather football. With a 9-1 record in his last 10 games under 30 degrees Fahrenheit. Mahomes knows how to keep his cool, literally. Combine that with the electric atmosphere at Arrowhead Stadium, and it's no wonder the Chiefs thrive in these conditions. Here's a fun question for you. What's your favorite cold weather game in Chiefs history? Drop it in the comments, I'd love to know. Stick around, because next we'll break down what to expect in this high-stakes matchup. You won't want to miss it. Alright, here we are, Texans versus Chiefs in one of the most anticipated playoff matchups of the season. We've got the Texans stepping into a frozen Arrowhead Stadium, with CJ Stroud trying to shake off his cold weather struggles. On the other side, there's Patrick Mahomes, who's practically made for games like this. So, what can we expect? For the Texans, it's going to come down to discipline and adaptability. If Stroud and his offense can start strong and stay composed, they've got a shot. But the Chiefs have history, home field advantage, and Mahomes' incredible record in cold games on their side. The odds? They definitely lean toward Kansas City. Now, it's your turn. Who do you think takes this one? Chiefs or Texans? And what's your final score prediction? Drop it in the comments below. I can't wait to see what you think. Don't forget to subscribe for more Chiefs content. Let's keep the conversation going.